You gotta give me one thing. I'm a scary judge of talent.
Adolphus Washington back-to-back plays.
The Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University.
Welcome, everybody. Season 2 of the Triple Double podcast is finally here for the 5 of you that have been waiting. For everyone else that enjoyed not having Jason and me on Twitter every 5 seconds bugging you to listen, sorry, but we're back. So we took about a month off here, tinkered with a few new ideas. We're going to be coming at you for another 30 or so episodes of what we're going to call season 2. We're going to try and come twice a week as we get closer to when college and eventually high school practice starts. Probably more like a once a week thing. But again, we're going to have the podcast very similar as before, but hopefully with a couple new twists. So in planning for these episodes, we looked at how we wanted to start this season off. And I generally listen to other podcasts, non-sports stuff. I don't listen to sports podcasts, and try and come up with ideas for episodes. And my favorite podcast is by a comedian called Joey Diaz called The Church of What's Happening Now. And he did a 2-part podcast, very, very extended conversation with the guy who produces his show about his first 10 years in comedy. And that gave me the idea, along with Jason, to kind of do our first decade, a little bit less for both of us here, in the basketball business and how we got to where we got to, and some of the things we did right, some of the things we did wrong, and just kind of get into the story of the whole thing. So I'm going to start off here a little bit, and when you're ready to jump in, you jump in. So, I started coaching AAU about spring of 2008. I was a freshman at University of Cincinnati, and hopped in AAU at the time with Shining Stars, run by Alex Meacham, program still in existence. And it was a good fit because Alex was a Bearcat guy, and a lot of the UC guys coached with him, worked with him, helped him do training, some different stuff, some opportunities to make some money or do some coaching. And did that for a couple of years and quickly decided that I wanted to do more of the inner city thing. That's where the talent was in Cincinnati at the time. The talent is maybe taking a little bit of a dive. I think it's starting to come back, but in that era, the classes of like 2009, 2010, really all the way through about 2014, where I was really coaching, really involved with the AAU scene in Cincinnati, there was a lot of talent. And went over to the Queen City Profits. And, it was my first opportunity working with Ozzie Davis and Tim Johnson to kind of be on what was labeled as more of the big time AAU, playing in better tournaments. And we went down to Orlando. And we went to Orlando. We had a kid named Aaron Thomas. And Aaron had one of the most unforgettable AAU seasons I've ever seen. And it was my opportunity for the first time to be around a high major, potential professional level basketball player at the high school level. I'd done that at the UC level, but at the high school level, I got to see that, and so many great experiences. Went to Orlando and played in what was called the Gold Showcase. This is before the shoe circuits. So at the time, playing in the Gold Showcase was essentially what today is like playing in the Nike EYBL or the Adidas Gauntlet, where it's very exclusive to get into. Only the best teams get to play. And, we went down there, we went 2-2. And, from there I was hooked on, I want to do more in the basketball world. I want to continue to coach AAU. I don't know what else I want to do when I graduate. I decided I didn't want to do any coaching, at least at the college level. So from there, get back to Cincinnati, really start to look on websites more and see some of the stuff like, Kurt Stubbs is doing with what was called Ohio High School Hoops at the time. And I had the idea of let's take, the Cincinnati kids, maybe some Dayton kids. We had some in our program, and try and get these guys exposure, because I'm starting to realize that, one thing we had with that Profits team with Aaron is when you put all the best kids in one city together in AAU, you can really compete. We played against 2 New York City teams. We played against a Georgia team that had Contavious Caldwell-Pope, who's been with the Lakers, where, we were able to not just compete, but to actually win the game. But, we did that by having all the best kids in our community. So I decided, now I want to try and create a platform that can help promote some of these best kids in our community, like what Kurt was doing, but even more localized. And at this time, I hadn't heard of anything in terms of what a scouting service was. And I was thinking about this today. My only knowledge, my first time that I even understood that scouting service existed was that same year going to Toledo to play in an AAU tournament. And it was called the Battle for the Borders. And it was hosted by Chaz Wolf and TJ Kelly. And those are guys that have been on this podcast. And at the time, I didn't even know what a scouting service was. I remember Chaz and TJ hosting the event. I called the number that was on the website and said, hey, we want to play in this event. And Chaz introduced himself as a college scout. And at that time, I think I was so naive that I thought that meant that he watched game film and typed up scouting reports for colleges on how to beat another college, and eventually get up there. And we had a really good showing, and TJ Kelly was taking pictures of our guys, putting them on his website, and started to figure, well, I can take this, look at what Kurt Stubbs was doing, look at what Rob Taylor was doing at a little bit younger level with Buckeye Prep, and then continue to grow. So started in October 2010. I had just finished up being a manager at Cincinnati and started Cincy Prep Hoops Report on what was that website? It's not WordPress. Blogspot. No. So it was Cincy Prep Hoops Report.blogspot.com, one of the longest URLs ever. And started that out, had no idea how to make it look aesthetically pleasing, struggled with it for hours, and just literally put all of my time into that. Got teased by my buddies when I would go to a game on Friday night, come back and say, I'll go out with you guys at 10 o'clock. And next thing I know, it's 1:30 and I'm still on there working on stuff for the website, but really, really got entrenched with that. And it was so fun because at the time, the website quickly grew and the basketball community really embraced it. And it was just fun, starting to get known in the community of high school coaches and other AAU coaches and kids. And at that time, I was still so young that I could really connect with the kids. And, before I knew it, we had 1 million page views, and things were really starting to look up. And I decided, well, again, I still don't know what I want to do with my life. I had committed to a job outside of basketball for when I graduated, and ended up coaching AAU again that year with Corey Tucker, and ended up doing it where for the first time I coached kids who were not Cincinnati kids. And the reason I did that at the time was to try and separate myself from that so I could still be independent with how I did Cincy Prep. And by doing that, I quickly discovered, well, hey, I want to start covering more Ohio kids. All of our kids on that team that Tuck and I coached were from Toledo and Dayton, and those are very similar areas, Cincinnati, where there wasn't a lot of coverage for those kids. So started to think about, well, how do I want to continue to grow and grow and grow? So then, it gets to that summer of 2011, and getting ready to go on the road for July. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, 2 of the guys who were really the big names in AAU in Cincinnati, and remember, AAU was probably even bigger in Cincinnati at that time because there was no scouting service in the city. So, when you had the college coaches calling about the best kids, they were going to call Ozzie Davis, Queen City Profits. They were going to call Trey Potter, Cincinnati Knights. They were going to call Ricardo Hill, Cincinnati Lakers, or they were going to call Mike Price from Shining Star. And Mike was connected somewhat in the suburban and Catholic leagues where some of those Profits and Knights kids really weren't from. So, I'm looking and thinking, well, I want to be like these guys and that they're so connected to college coaches. And I want to really have a network to connect these kids to these college coaches. And I went down to Orlando again. And this time I went down there with Rick Broering, who has been in the team site model of basketball with Rivals, with Scout, now with 24/7 for a long time, covering Xavier, covering NKU, covering Northern Kentucky high school sports. And we're down there in Orlando for the week. And I remember we were in just one of the crappiest hotels of all time, didn't even have Wi-Fi. in 2011, and we would go to McDonald's at night and plug in our computer and sit there for 4 hours and just talk basketball and talk ideas. And Rick and I had the idea. We didn't have a name for it or anything, but we had the idea that we were going to take what he did with his Northern Kentucky site, what I did with Cincinnati Prep, start to then slowly reach out to more of Ohio, more of Kentucky, and create our own scouting service. So we go almost in the middle of the night. We go to Kinko's and we start printing off stuff from his site, printing off stuff from my site, combining it into a packet and trying to make what was be the first semblance of a invoice and a sample of information from what would become triple double prospects. And I remember very clearly, we were arguing about what to price it at, and we came up with pricing it at $50 a year, which means if we sold it to every college in the country, we'd still be broke after all of our expenses. But we took it out. I tried to be personable, introduce myself to all these college coaches while I was watching some of the other teams in our program play, while our team was playing before and after the game down in Orlando. And if anyone's ever been to Orlando, it's great. Like a lot of the AAU sites are now, but they weren't back in this time, where all the gyms are in one big arena, which is what Orlando gives you. And I remember one of the first guys I ever gave the packet of information to was Todd Kowalczyk, who at the time and still is the head basketball coach at University of Toledo. And I had this information. I was so proud of it. And it had, here are the rankings of all the players in Cincinnati. And he looked at it and he said, well, this is good, but, this only gives me half of the picture. And half of the picture is, here's who the kid is. Here's what he does well. Here's maybe what he doesn't do well, but it doesn't give me a evaluation as to, can he play high major Division I basketball, mid major Division I basketball, or is he a Division II player? Is he lower than that, et cetera? And I started to kind of just look in Orlando and take ideas from different people and talk scouting, and quickly tried to entrench myself in the scouting game. TJ Kelly was in Orlando, got to know him a little bit, and being down there with Rick Brower, and the other person I got connected to, who I'd met 2 or 3 times in the past, but hadn't really connected with, was John Stovall, who, had the premier scouting service in Ohio before he moved to Oregon, still has a scouting service, very well-respected guy with Nike basketball, with ESPN basketball. And, John has even, today still so helpful in helping me, come up with new ideas, to run ideas by him, and to, learn how to navigate the scouting world, not just from a basketball sense, but from a professional standpoint. So, what I did then was I took basketball and I looked at, what I learned from, being at Cincinnati in terms of seeing guys from different college levels and games and walkthroughs and different capacities as a manager, seeing our guys at UC and understanding what I could of basketball at the time. And then I just made it my mission really to hustle around and hit every single gym I could. And one of the first things John Stovall told me was, he said, well, you respect the guys that have been in the gym. And I think we've talked about that before in the podcast. And, when I say respect the guys that have been in the gym, I'm talking about, the more gyms that I was at, the more I saw kids in terms of quality of kids, quantity of kids, seeing kids multiple times. You earn the respect of other people like John, like Chaz, like Kurt, like TJ, and then just, college coaches, high school coaches, et cetera. And I tried to do as much of that as I could, and then be the only scout in the market was a huge, huge leg up. Being young, having the internet presence, was able to quickly, have kids and parents really coming to me. And, from there, after Rick and I did that, we created the website. We called it Triple Double Prospects. We decided to do the scouting service. And, Rick was really the IT guy on it, and I was more of the salesman on it. So I was sitting at home, just, Googling different schools, cold calling their coaches, sometimes pretending like I had met them on the road when I hadn't, just trying to generate sales for the website. And I had guys like Greg Dennis, who's an athletic director here in Cincinnati. Chris Shoemade, who at the time was an operations guy at Cincinnati, is now an assistant at Northern Kentucky. All type of guys who are kind of mentors to me, who helped me, start to build some relationship with guys, get some of those first type of clients. Now we're going to pause for a quick break for some ads. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to playeasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at playeasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for, an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today. All right, we're back with the rest of the story here about getting into basketball. So, fast forward here, we're right about the fall of 2011. And in 2011, I had just decided after only a few months that at the time, the 9-to-5 thing wasn't for me. So I'd taken a job out of college, decent paying job for what my degree was in, which is communications, and decided I didn't want to do that. I want to continue to push forward in basketball and hopefully, make a name for myself. So I got really, really blessed in that Rick Broering actually left Rivals.com and went to Scout. And when he went to Scout, that opened up a position at Rivals.com. And through a couple channels, they reached out to me and offered me the opportunity to cover Xavier in the recruiting and this basic team coverage. And took that opportunity and learned how to really continue to grow a community, work with the message boards, which at the time in 2011, through maybe 2014 when I stopped doing it, were huge because Twitter was so much less of a resource for people looking to get information on recruiting and all of that good stuff. So ran the message board of Xavier and then was able to develop a relationship with Eric Bossi, who is still the head basketball analyst with Rivals.com. And Eric basically gave me an opportunity that's going to sound stupid, but greatly benefited the both of us. And what he gave me the opportunity to was for everything in the fall and the spring and the summer and the winter as well, that he couldn't cover. He's only one person trying to cover the entire nation for Rivals. He let me cover those events. The thing about it was that I didn't get paid. And if I did get paid, it was probably about $100 an event. And you're talking about probably a 72-hour event. And I did get my travel paid for it, thankfully. But by volunteering to do that, I really was able to continue to develop relationships all across the country and slowly kind of make my name, somewhat nationally with Rivals in terms of getting to go to events in Florida and Memphis and Las Vegas and Houston and Dallas and different places in the Midwest, in Virginia and South Carolina for the Peach Jam, helping out there, so many different free places, where I didn't make any money, but I took a chance on myself and was able to really, really grow the brand and just kind of hustle financially with the little bit of money I was making for the Xavier Rivals thing, with some money I was making off advertising from the website, with trying to do an event here or there, just really, really trying to hustle and make my name. And around that time also, I worked with the legend, hopefully a few people on the podcast will remember this name, Jonathan JB from the E Bergen. And JB started working for Cincy Prep and he started working for Triple Double Prospects. And JB and me just really hit the road everywhere we could go. Went down from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, all the way up to the Northeast, to Pittsburgh and beyond, and hit all the events. And JB really got our name out there as well. But then, JB, along with Trey Potter and along with Corey Tucker and myself, and we really got together and started running the open gyms. And we still run those open gyms now. It's really just me. Those guys are, I still talk to those guys, but they're not as involved in the open gym. But, we were able to have kids in Cincinnati like Aaron Thomas, like Samaje Christian, who's gone on to play some NBA minutes, like Devin Williams, who's gone on to play great career at West Virginia, played in a lot of NBA summer leagues, making, $250,000 a year in Europe right now. And we're able to take things like video, take things like Recruiting Scoop, just relationships, and take those kids and do college visits, do all type of different things where we're able to put content online as well as just in the community talking to people, where our website continued to grow. And one of the really fun things for me was anytime I would go in the community, especially like in the inner city, I would always be so well taken care of by the athletic department, by the administrative staff or teachers at the school, the coaches at the school. And at the time, again, it was really the only resource online for Cincinnati kids, trying to make it on the college basketball scene. And, while my information at the time, I'm sure was terrible in terms of the evaluations and, what level of play I thought a kid could fit into, it was still something. And it was something that college coaches were at least getting names from. And, I'm really appreciative of all the guys at the high school level or AAU level in Cincinnati who, helped me and supported me while I was doing this. At the time, I was still coaching. I still had guys like Willie Moore, who played at Oregon, played at Miami, Ohio, is like my little brother staying with me at my house, still coaching AAU, still trying to run events, do some training, all type of different things. And then in the fall of 2012, my life really changed, and some of the basketball things that I've been working towards really picked up. And that opened when the head of Rivals called me and said, you did a good job with the Xavier thing. Now the Kentucky site has opened up from a basketball recruiting standpoint, and that paid 3 times the amount of money. And that was going to be my first time to really be able to support myself financially to the way I wanted to, and to kind of really gain validation. Because when you're talking about covering recruiting for men's basketball for Kentucky, you're really talking about covering recruiting for the top 50 players in the country, maybe top 100 players. So then when Eric Bossi would send me to do national stuff, I knew what I was talking about. I knew who the players were. I could continue to grow that brand. And then it also helped me kind of dig my nails into the basketball market in the state of Kentucky, and then further into Ohio, where I could take Rivals, make that my main gig, but also say, hey, I've got the scouting service on the side where I live in Cincinnati. We cover Ohio, we cover Kentucky, and to continue to grow it from there. So that's really the main parts of it. And, since then, I want to talk about a couple other things I've done, which is, around 2 years after that. That was an unbelievable experience working with Rivals and everything. Did decide to leave Rivals and go for a more high-paying thing in corporate, get out of doing basketball full-time and go to doing basketball part-time. And when I decided to go to doing basketball part-time, I really tried to revamp the Triple Double Prospects website. At the time, we'd already shut down Cincy Prep Hoops Report because I couldn't do all those things with doing the Kentucky thing. So revamped Triple Double, tried to make it more of a website that coincides with the scouting service and less of a website where there was just this overflow of information because of time constraints. Worked with a guy named N.D. Kendrick, worked a little bit at the time with Zach Fleer, and kind of recreated a scouting service brand. And my scouting service LLC now is called Mid-American Basketball Consultants, which, N.D. Kendrick and I developed back in 2013. And we took that and really said, well, we're going to try and be the best scouting service in not just Ohio, where Randy lives, in Indiana, but in the Midwest. And we really decided, well, we're willing to battle, with the people like John Stovall, in a friendly, competitive sense of, let's make the best product we can make it. And we really continued to grow from there. From there, went over with Prep Hoops. And, that wasn't a horrible experience, but it wasn't for me. It was an experience where they wanted me to cover different type of kids that I wanted to cover. And then I think there was less of a community aspect to it. It felt to me like a job. And at the time, I'm making good money in the corporate world. I didn't want to take on a basketball job. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And that's why ultimately I decided to leave. And Zach Fleer was working with me with Prep Hoops, and he also decided to leave. Jason and him then started 270 Hoops, and I went back to doing Triple Double Prospects. And when I did that, I told myself, unless it's a full-time gig where I decide to leave the corporate world, I'm not going to take on a basketball job that I have to answer to anybody other than myself. And I'm only going to do basketball things that I want to do. I'm only going to do what I basically call projects. And when I still, kind of look at what I'm doing in basketball now, I look at myself as kind of a projects guy, whether that's, right now I'm really into doing our follow-up and gym series. Right now I'm really into doing our podcast. In about a month here, I'm probably going to shift focus and start getting ready to do, the high school scouting aspect of it. And I like to juggle different opportunities, but I like to really do it with an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's one of the things that, if you're going to make it in scouting, there's really two ways to go about it. And we had Corey Evans on the podcast, and he's done it through Rivals, kind of like I have, and continues to use that Rivals platform to draw in a national audience for a scouting service. The other way to do it is kind of to do what Chaz did. So now when I'm, continuing to build my scouting service here, even in like year 8, I'm still looking to kind of learn from people like Chaz, where we take it as our own entity, and you have to market it yourself. You have to learn different strategies yourself, where you can't compete with the resources of Rivals.com, but we can still offer a great product to coaches. And, maybe people on Twitter or the website don't realize what we're offering, but at the end of the day, our primary client, our only client, is the college. And then, the last part of it is, we still try and do it to benefit the local kids. I'm still involved in AAU, at least to some extent, probably always will be, still trying to do different free events and whatnot in Cincinnati to help our kids. And my whole philosophy is the more I do those events, the more the top players in Cincinnati come support our event. It gives me the information on who the top players are and just makes for an easier product for me to get to the college coaches, a more effective product for me to get to the college coaches, where not only have I seen these kids play, but I have a relationship with these kids, so I can tell the colleges, this kid is probably a good fit. Well, no, this kid probably isn't going to qualify academically, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really the main story here. What do you got, big guy?
I don't know.
You don't know? You want to talk about any of you and Zach getting into it?
Zach and I, like you said about the prep hoop stuff, is he was kind of tired of that subscriber model. And I think that was that's what you were talking about too, is they want you to cover with the subscriber model. They're really just trying to get subs. It's not really about the scouting. It's about their scouting service, but it's about the content and who they can get to buy it. And Zach and I decided, I'd say it was October of 2015, ironically enough, we were doing a podcast ourselves. It was just called Around 270 Hoops, and it was going to be a podcast weekly. We did whatever. And one night we were just sitting there at the table after the podcast, and I was like, why can't we just make this a real website? I was like, you have the connections with the coaches just like I do. You have the connections with the players. I was like, why don't we just open a website? I had run multiple websites in the past. I'd run, like you said, a long website name. It was scarberryproductions.wordpress.com. I'd run that for a year and a half too. So I was like, why don't we just do that kind of thing? And, I've kind of had transitioned at that point from being a writer and a scout to doing a lot more video stuff. I've been working with Darren Scarberry at that time at Next Up Recruits, going with him to my first ever Peach Jam, which was still one of the most amazing basketball experiences I've ever had in my life. Getting to see a person like Jason Tatum up close in person, and you're getting to film him. But I kind of translated to the video side. So I was like, why don't I just I'll handle the graphics and the video content, and you handle the writing, and we'll figure it out. And that first year was a little rough for us on the site because we were updating scores manually, and we kind of wanted to be instead of more of a scouting service, it was more of a news site, because the local papers covered it okay, but they didn't cover it there were games that they were missing, and they were events that they weren't covering. And Zach and I just decided we were going to do that instead. And so we were manually putting in games every night. But as we kept going, it just kind of started to build a following. In that first year, he had an idea to run what was at that time was just Battle for the City. It didn't have any branding. And it was going to be an all-star game for him to get the City League kids some exposure. And we took it under the 270 wing. And now it's grown into a 2-day event with all 4 different classes competing conference by conference. Because in Columbus, I think the biggest thing is there's always arguments about which conference has the best players. And that was kind of where we started with the City League North and the South. And ever since then, it's just kind of grown. We added the fall league. Coach Victor Dandridge from Northland had an excellent open gym that he just couldn't. He kind of passed on to Zach, and we decided to basically come up with the fall league last year and this year. And, we've done a lot more of the events side. And, this summer I also picked up a gig at Slam Magazine working part-time as a videographer. So I kind of got to get back to that national scene that I had done for a couple of years. But it's hard, like you said, unless it's a full-time job, paying job where you can do it all the time. And, there's content there. It was hard.
But you and Zach, though, I mean, before it was full time, when you guys were still both in college, I mean, you guys took what I really respect, which is kind of the trial by fire attitude, which is you guys just kind of jumped right in. And I remember, you guys doing what I basically did and talking about going to those events with rivals. You guys just hopped in a car, you, Darren, and Zach, and drove down to Orlando. And, I remember you guys have no idea what you guys were doing, but that's okay because you guys turned out a lot of great content. And even now today, it's not the type of content you guys really feature, but, you learned a lot. You did trial by error. And then more than anything, I think the theme here, that goes all the way to our advertising when I was talking about my day thing, which is the Anago cleaning systems thing, is, you took a chance on yourself and, you really bought in to create your own business. And, that unless you're want to go down the more heavily journalism approach of, like a Rivals or a Scout thing, which is something that in today's age with the Twitter world is very hard to break into. And it's even exponentially harder to make any real money at. If you're not going to do that, you have to be willing to take a chance on yourself. And you and Zach have definitely done that. And then now, you're doing a very similar thing to what I'm doing, which is you are just coming up with ideas for events and trying them out. And, it's pretty much something where, you can't miss. And that, I was told a long time ago by actually a basketball guy who I don't even like, but, we were talking about trainers, and he told me, he's like, no matter what type of training you're doing for the kid, it's still beneficial. It might not be the most efficient training to get a kid better, but it's in the gym. It's doing something. That's what you guys are doing with 270 Hoops. That's what I've done. I mean, I've had events that have failed. I've run one-day AAU events where a team gets in a fight on their first game, and then the coach tells me we only got to play one game, so I don't think we should have to pay more than 1/3. So, I mean, I've seen all type of crazy stuff in events, and now you guys are really continuing from an organizational standpoint, from an online platform standpoint, to continue to grow. And I mean, that was, I think, kind of the theme and the idea of creating the podcast today. And I hope this doesn't come off as arrogant, as you and I, or the names we've mentioned that have been successful, like Chaz or TJ or Stovall or Zach or Stubbs or TJ Pete Russ or anybody. It hopefully doesn't come off as arrogant as this is the way we did it, this is the only way we did it, or kind of glorifying what we've done in basketball. It's just kind of a story for what it's worth, so everyone can continue to see how basketball really works. And the main idea of this podcast, the primary idea I had behind here was not just to have conversations about basketball with different people in basketball, was for people, whether they're parents, coaches, or just fans of the sport, ideas, and talking about having different conversations about how the basketball industry really works, how scouting works, how college coaching works, how high school coaching works. And, we've talked about scouting a lot on this podcast, but I think today, hopefully we got a little bit more entrenched with stories and understanding, where people come from, what their motives are, and, how we got into it and how we continue to grow.
Yeah. It's just, everybody takes a different path. I'm sure if we talk to, TJ or Chaz, they would have, they've had their own fair share of stories too. So, it's not about, like you said, it's not about us being arrogant or being, cocky about this is how you have to do it. It's just, we're telling our experiences as we go along. And
then the other part of it is, you have to have a competitive streak in you to do it. And I mean, that's why, the majority of us, even if we weren't great players. I mean, I was a very average high school player at best. Jason and Zach didn't play high school basketball, but have been around high school sports forever. Is you have to have that competitive mindset. And, like TJ Kelly and Chaz Wolf, for example, a lot of people don't know, they originally were in a scouting service together. And what they did was they combined Ohio and Michigan Michigan to battle what at the time was the biggest scouting service that did Ohio and Michigan. And they had that competitive mindset and then eventually went their own ways and continued to grow. But when I look at everyone in the podcast, everyone we've brought on this show in season 1, and hopefully everybody we're going to bring on in season 2 is on the show because they've done something innovative. And like somebody who really sticks out to me is like Ty Kish, and that he started City League Hoops TV, and then he's gone on to do so many things with YouTube, so many things with different camps, that he's constantly innovating, and he's not just complacent to be, well, he's the guy that knows about it. He wants to be coming at you from a new angle. Or look at somebody, we talked about Corey Evans earlier, where Corey Evans, I remember, was a graduate assistant at Duquesne. The staff got fired. He was out of a job. He was struggling to find a basketball job. So he did kind of what Zach and Jason did, was he just drove to AAU events, showed up, and, started writing scouting notes for his own personal use. And a few months later, he's selling them. And, that's really, you have to, again, believe in yourself, but then you have to, be willing to outwork people and do something for free. And any money that we're making now on it is the way, I look at it is it's not money that we're making for what we're doing now. It's really money that we're slowly recouping for the work that we did over the years to build our brand to where it is now. And that's why, I think there's frustration when you look on Twitter now and see some young guys who haven't been around basketball, wanting to have name brand, wanting to, be compensated at the same level as some of us are in terms of scouting service stuff, is that, we know that we've paid our dues, and, I'm not advocating or against anybody, joining us in this market, but we just want everyone to pay their dues and go through, similar experiences.
Yeah, I think the basketball media world it's a meritocracy. It's what have you done? It's, what have you done? What have you put in? Like Zach and I, you talked about Orlando, like Zach and I, for however many days, I think that was a 6-day event. Like
those were long. That's back when the open period was the entire month of July, so it wasn't even by period.
So I think it was a Tuesday to a Monday event, and our hotel was 40 minutes away. So every day it was, you get up at 7:30 or 7:10 because then you got an 8 o'clock game, and then you're out until 10. You're writing until 2 a.m. and you're right back up at the next day. There's no stopping. And I think some of the guys, some of the younger guys that are coming into the industry, you do have to pay your dues. You do have to cover that 8 a.m. game where, it may not be, the world's greatest basketball, because everybody, the players and the fans in the stands are all still half asleep. You still have to cover that game, and, you just have to pay your dues. I think that's the biggest thing.
Okay, well, great. Well, guys, again, this wasn't the most organized, structured podcast, but, our whole idea here, again, based off of other podcasts I listened to, was just kind of tell the story of how we got here, hopefully understand a little bit more of why we created this podcast, why we continue to do it. And I want to thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you learned a little bit of basketball stuff. We're going to be, again, back at you guys with about 30 more episodes. Twice a week, hopefully, then once a week as it gets closer to season. We're going to have a lot of the guys we mentioned here. They're going to be back on the show. We're going to have college coaches. We're going to have high school coaches. And hopefully we'll bring you guys a lot of great content. I know Jason's been putting it on Twitter, but also for anybody listening now, if there's anything you want us to talk about, any topics, any questions you have, you can always reach out to us on Twitter. Mine is at Corey, Corey_Albertson. Or you can email me at TDP, as in Triple Double Prospect Corey, COREY, @gmail.com. And you can go over the other.
And then we also have a Twitter account, which is at triple dub pod, which is triple DUB pod, POD.
Are we looking for some more followers for that?
Yeah, always looking for more followers. And we will never get to the Zach Fleer 14,000 status maybe, but we can at least try. So.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks again. That was the Triple Double Podcast, Season 2 debut. We'll talk to you guys soon.